So today I'm going to show you how to build a unit study on Abraham Lincoln for older kids. So I'm going to hit this about older elementary age, and you could scale it up or down, or you could do it at all three levels if you have kids, because I have kids on all three, so I'm going to hit those. So I probably want to do this one in February in conjunction with President's Day. And I'm going to pretend that I did George Washington the week before, because those two would build really nice together on this. So let me show you. I'm going to start with my planner like this. I've got the days of the week. I just made a quick table on Word and printed this out. And then all my subjects down here. And that way I can just put in all my ideas there and keep track of this all week long. And then I can just check those off as we do them. And then this I could just keep as my records. So starting off, I'm going to want to find some books about Abraham Lincoln. So I have a few just from my bookshelf. This one is a picture book of Abraham Lincoln. And this one's a fine lower elementary age one. It's got just plain pictures. So nothing fabulous about this one. There's probably a lot of better ones out there, but like I said, this is what I had at my house. And then here's one about the Gettysburg Address. And it's got these great woodcut pictures, and it goes through the whole Gettysburg Address. So you could just quickly read through this one. That really wouldn't take very much time. And this one's not really about Lincoln so much as people wanting to, go and see his train after he died. And so what I like about this one is it's just got beautiful pictures in it. And it's about, remembering what a good president he was. So I'd probably just throw this one in at the end of the week. Some other really good ones that I didn't have time to get is Lincoln Tells a Joke. Lincoln loved jokes. And so they helped him in dealing with so many difficult circumstances. And so the whole book traces his humor through his lifetime. Another good one was Lincoln and His Boys. And that one's told more about through his son's eyes. So more about like how he was a parent, with all the background, the Civil War and all that. So for older kids, I haven't looked at this one, but it sounds really good. Lincoln Through the Lens. And it's about how photography really helped Lincoln's presidency. And so I've heard that's a really good one. Otherwise, I'd probably have them read one of these. Who was Abraham Lincoln? If you've never checked one of these out, these are just really nice to be able to read through for, older kids. And I think there might even be a Netflix on this one. I don't have Netflix right now. So this is one that my son really liked, Action Presidents. And these are hilarious. It's a comic book style, but you have to kind of know a little bit about Lincoln before you'll get all the jokes. But he liked this one a lot. So there's my reading. Now for writing, I'm going to, like I said, pretend that I just did George Washington the week before. So after learning some about Lincoln, I'm going to give them this as a Venn diagram. A Venn diagram is basically just a visual representation. Usually it's two circles that overlap in the middle. So on one side, I'm going to have them write things about Abraham Lincoln, things about George Washington, and things that you could say about both of them. They were both presidents. They were both born in February. So things like that. And then I'd probably have them do this on their own just to see what they know or remember. And then we would share it and write down extra things to make sure that they really have this filled out. And then later on in the week, I would have them use this to write a comparison and contrast about Abraham Lincoln and George Washington. So, for my daughter, I'm going to expect just a few sentences. For my son, I'm going to expect some paragraphs, working on it throughout the week. And so if they're a struggling writer, so like my youngest daughter, she doesn't write sentences at all yet. So she would just tell me her things and I would write it down for her. If they're really struggling with writing, I'd probably provide an outline with just some blanks for them to fill in the different comparisons and contrasts. And then for handwriting, I'd either have them copy the Gettysburg Address or look up some Lincoln quotes. Like there's a lot of good ones. There's those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves. Or there's the one that he said about the rose bush, where there's two ways of looking at it. That roses have thorns or that thorns have roses. And so, you know, he just had so many poignant thoughts. So I think those would be worth copying down. For math, of course, we're going to be studying money. So for my youngest daughter, it's just going to be identifying pennies and counting them. And, or if you know, slightly older, you could have them adding money. For my daughter, multiplying money, probably not pennies because that's not very useful, but you know. So then I'm going to use these for science. So there's lots of things you can do with pennies. This is just one thing. I mean, you can talk about surface tension, all sorts of other stuff. So I'm going to have them work on oxidation. So vinegar and salt will clean pennies up nicely. So I've already mixed a little bit of that. And my pennies are pretty dull, like this one here, pretty yucky. I'm going to drop it in there. And if you just wait a little bit or start rubbing on them, oh, that one's so dirty. I don't know if it's going to come off good. Anyway, so if you wanted, you could just give them all a bunch of liquids and see which one they think is going to be the best. So if you wanted to only give them liquids, you could give them, so that one's already a little bit shinier. You could give them vinegar and Tabasco, and it will do the same thing because of the salt in the Tabasco sauce. So just put all your pennies in there, observe them, and see what happens. These ones are already looking nice and shiny. Pretty. And then that would be one day. The next day, I would have had them lay the pennies out on a paper towel and just let them sit. So if you let them sit, after a couple hours, they will start to oxidize again, and that's because it's being exposed to the air. So once you have let this sit for probably like a day or two, then the tops of these will be nice and green again, and then you can lift them up, and the other side should still be shiny because it hasn't been exposed to air. And so then you could talk about how the Statue of Liberty also has a thin layer of copper on it. And so when it was first built, it was nice and beautiful, copper, beautiful, shiny. And over the years, it turned green. In fact, the base of the Statue of Liberty was actually made from children's donated pennies. So you could also put in that fact. So we do, you know, cleaning pennies, turning pennies green, and then I'd probably switch over to apples and how they oxidize. So give them some apples to just lay out, and then give them apples with water on it, or apples with vinegar, or apples with lemon juice, and see which one resists rusting the most. So all of these are great chemical reactions, and that's definitely something that you want to cover with them, the difference between a chemical reaction and physical reaction. And I saw one that was about potato chips, but that one looked like it might have more things than what I have time for. I'll put it in the link because it's kind of different. And then on the last day, I would give them lemon juice and Q-tips and have them write secret messages, and then take a blow dryer and put heat underneath it, or you could use a candle, but it's kind of hard to do. So basically you just want to get that heated up, and the heat will decompose the lemon juice, and it releases carbon that it will basically oxidize as well. So there's, you know, 4 or 5 great projects that you could do very easily. So I've already hit all my main subjects through just talking about Lincoln, and I'm going to want to cover, you know, just a few bonus ones. So I'd probably do some sort of cooking project, looking up what kinds of food he liked. I know that he likes cone cakes, which is kind of like the old-fashioned pancakes. So we'd probably cook some of those. I saw a project where you could take the oxidation from your pennies and scrape it off, and then use that to make pigment for painting. And that's how they did it back in the Middle Ages. But that one seemed more than what I wanted to do, but I'll put that one in the link below too, just in case you want to. So instead, I came up with an easy art project. So I had a picture of Lincoln, I cut it all apart, and then colored each square different colors, and then pasted it back together. Some other things that you could do with this is using something like this one. You could give them a blank grid and have them copy the picture over. You could even, if you're doing that, you could, you know, reduce this down So that way they have to go from small to big. That's scaling. So that would be an art thing you could do. If you wanted to mix in math with this, the original that I saw of this, she had mixed these all up and she had given each one a code. So like A1, A2, A3. And then she gave them a blank grid with those on there and so that you could match them up and color them in. Or you could do it where on the back side you could write math problems. So for my daughter, I'd probably write like 1 cent, 2 cent, 3 cent. And then on the grid, I would have that matched up with the actual penny picture or vice versa. So for my son, I might do it with higher math problems that don't have anything to do with pennies, just something to get him practicing. So there's a whole week of stuff, and it didn't take very long to put together at all, and it's taught at all the levels. So there you have it. It's not a big deal.